when I did continuing legal educations with Andy Benjamin, and you're familiar with his research, which is there's so much depression and so much drug use and there's so much alcoholism and there's so much hopelessness. And we would always begin with the reality of what has been the pain, what has been the darkness, what has been the shadow, what has been the demand of our profession, and then merge with these ideas of where can we go and where are we going. And so I loved working with him and Paula Lustbader at Seattle U around these hope for the practitioner and the profession. And I think it is really finding ways that both of those can work alongside of each other. And has done this. I mean, he's been teaching this stuff for so many years. And it's like, well, you know, I hate it when I hit my head. You know, well, why do we not learn from this data, from this, something's not working in law? And I think that so much focus on the winning, so much focus on the adversarial, so much denial of our emotions, so much denial of our deeper values, so much denial of what really is possible. And that's why I find a lot of both pleasure and satisfaction in seeing the conversations that are emerging. You know, to try to figure out the shadow of law, or why it is that there's been such, I would say, unease, almost merging on dis-ease. And I think that unease comes when things are out of balance. And I'm thinking of things that I've learned by talking with lawyers and judges in my experiences in retreats. And I mean, I can name things, you know, this unrelenting demand for billable hours, the kind of competition that goes on, not just winning against the other party, but my most recent conversation was with some family members who are talking about the competition within their law firm, the competition over who has the most hours and who's going to get credit for what. So I think that, and then I think this almost presenting as though we should approach these facts with an amoral stance, like not considering the impact of what our advice is, not considering the impact of our client's behavior on, if we're thinking globally or if we're thinking around the environment. I think the combination of those things together, and I love some of the research that Larry Krieger and some of the others have done around law students and having to put aside values that were important and say that, you know, number one in the class, winning and money is where it's at. And I think we all know at some level that's not where it's at. So I think to the extent that that has not been able to be languaged, to the extent that our training in the law schools has been so one-sided around the analytic, the being able to demonstrate the intellectual without factoring in any of the important skills around even emotional intelligence. So I think as you get out of balance, one gets into a place of unease, and then not to be able to name it or not be able to talk about it. One of the things I did at the Leadership Institute of Seattle, in addition to doing the legal work, I also taught law and ethics to those who are going to be therapists, counselors. And I remember one of the most stunning books that came out. It was called The Networker Magazine. But what it had was story after story, true stories, by therapists who had really screwed up. Therapists who had violated ethical codes, therapists who had gotten in trouble because they had sex with their clients, therapists who had gotten into dual relationships, therapists who had breached confidentiality. And there was something about a very powerful learning that both the therapists who were already practicing had by being able to read about and name it and talk about the challenges of it. And when I was teaching these up-and-coming therapists law and ethics, those were the most profound learning moments, I think, when they were able to hear these stories of the struggles of the therapist and the learnings that took place. And I remember some time back, Barry Althoff, who was with the Washington State Bar, wrote about how hard it was for lawyers, A, to acknowledge mistakes, B, to talk about mistakes, and C, to be able to move to the place of what are the learnings from our mistakes. So I think, and again, I'm thinking about this thing around the shadow, to the extent we can acknowledge our own mistakes, and to the extent we can't learn from them and be supported in that, then I think it's really hard to keep a balance or to keep into a place of harmony and well-being. What I'm most excited about law are the people that are learning, coming forward, naming, sharing, and creating law as it can be in the 21st century. I have a strong felt sense and a belief that the word transformation is not too big a word. And I think, as with any other significant change, it's uphill. And I think to the extent that we can have conversations and we can inspire one another and we come together and we learn for the next thing, and that message gets carried through to our most precious asset, which are our law students and our young lawyers. So that's what I'm excited about in law, because I see breakthroughs. I see small inroads that get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I see the same names 10 years later staying on that path, being on the journey, with the confidence that it's not the personalities or the individuals, it is emerging. This is what's meant to happen. This is what is going to be our profession. And for 10 years, I have talked about my vision of 21st century lawyering, which is the lawyer that's more conscious, and so this mindfulness that's happening, this focus on meditation, the lawyer that is more collaborative. Stu Webb, thank you very much. Pauline Tessier, who's in this area, yes. The whole movement around collaborative law, and for us to be able to collaborate together. The thing that I'm aware of is when Andy Benjamin and I and Paula Lustbader sat down to plan these CLEs, it was a collaborative thing that emerged that was bigger than any of us. It was brilliant because it built on one idea, which built to another, which built to another. The more lawyers can do that, the more lawyers can trust that collaboration with each other and with their clients, the more it can emerge. And I love the creativity, the creative problem solving, the fact that lawyers are being encouraged to really try to develop their creative skills. So that's when I think about hopefulness. I see these things. I see people reading Daniel Pink, The Whole New Mind, and finding ways to learn to do things as interesting as improv because they'll be better lawyers, or to really be able to believe, if I paint, if I do that music that I love so much, continue to play my musical instrument, I will be a better lawyer. And I think those ideas are being floated, and they're catching on. Slowly, but they're catching on.